Hi, everyone. Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Just Transition Subcommittee of the Vermont Climate Council meeting. Today is Thursday, October 3rd, 2024. And it's nice to have everyone back together for the second month in a row after our summer break. And yeah, again, apologies that I was a little tardy in getting going. I tried to do the link from the agenda and it didn't work, so I had to go back to the calendar. So I'm not sure. Something I'll have to check. I don't know if others have had that same challenge, but glad to be here. Happy to go through the agenda just as a quick review of what we'll cover this evening. Did we do a check? Did we have quorum? And again, I'm sorry that I'm probably repeating questions that you already answered.
That's okay. We don't have quorum yet. I think that Mona will be joining us, so we can just go forward with updates and, whoops, non-decision related items.
Sounds great. Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll start with the review of tonight's agenda, then we'll do just kind of review of the meeting minutes from our September 5th meeting, and then have an update from our Climate Action Office partners. Sophie and Liz are both here this evening. I think we wanted to talk a little bit about some responsibilities that Just Transition Subcommittee may have in regards to a section of the original Climate Action Plan. So we can review the section entitled Building Equity into the Climate Action Plan and Ensuring a Just Transition. So some of you may have had a chance to review that and look through it in advance of tonight's meeting. If you haven't, we can go through it together. And then I think Sophie will give an update to us about sort of some of the commitments that the Climate Action Office has made around production of this, the next revised and updated Climate Action Plan. Maybe spend a few minutes talking about some upcoming stakeholder engagement meetings in October. We'll pause for public comment and take any comments or questions from any members of the public that have joined us. And then Carrie I know has to hop off early, so hopefully we'll be able to still be here for the portion of the agenda where we talk about the new guiding principles visual document that Claire and Carrie and others have spent a fair amount of time developing. Talk about the process that went through presenting that to the Climate Council and to the steering committee, and then talk about what that means for next steps and roles and responsibilities for liaisons to other subcommittees to be able to share this new visual as subcommittees are going through their action items and recommendations and doing some prioritization process. So we'll share the visual, talk about what's coming next, and then that'll bring us into the last agenda topic for the evening, which is just talking about the climate action plan and how liaisons are feeling. Those of you that are functioning as liaisons to other subcommittees, how the meetings are going, how your attendance is at those meetings is working out, if there's discussion topics that are coming up that feel relevant to share with this full subcommittee. And then a reminder that we can, bring topics or even bring invited guests back to our subcommittee from other subcommittees to talk about kind of the just transition guiding principles. And then we'll wrap up with just a few minutes to talk about our upcoming meeting and what's next. So anything about that agenda that people have questions about, or anything you want to add or change? Okay, not hearing anything or seeing any hands. Great. Well, let's take a look at the meeting minutes from our September meeting. Since
Abby,
we don't,
Matthew has his hand up. You
oh,
might.
I'm sorry. I didn't see it, Matthew. Please, Matthew, go ahead.
Yes. To be added to the toolbox, I think Sophia or the rest of the Climate Council, the plainlanguage.gov guidelines, to host these meetings, to put on our docket. So I sent an email about that earlier, not just to the whole Climate Councils, but to make sure that, we have something else, what does plain language mean? And that's by plainlanguage.gov. So I sent that email to Sophia. and the rest of the climate councils. If not yet, I'll send it in the chat so people would understand that these are federal guidelines for any government, official meetings. So thank you.
Yeah, Matthew, thank you. I just put it in the chat. I did want to make sure that we talked about that when we were going over the guiding principles visual. So I'm glad that you brought it up as well. It's a really interesting, I'll be honest, I hadn't looked at this link before. And it offers some really great resources that Matthew, you can run us through, or I'm happy to share based upon the little bit of time that I spent kind of navigating the site. But
You're doing good. You can do it. You're doing good. Yeah, I'll let you. Thank you.
well, I hope that you'll chime in. I think this is an area you obviously have a lot of kind of knowledge and passion around. So we'll make sure that we build time into the discussion on the visual around plain language. Okay, great. Thanks for that. So any thoughts around the meeting minutes? I'll just put the link in the chat for folks to be reminded if you didn't have a chance to look at them. We won't be able to do kind of a formal approval without quorum. But were there any comments or changes, additions that folks wanted to offer? Okay, I'm not seeing any. For some reason, I missed your hand last time, Matthew, so please someone call out if I'm not catching the hands. Okay, great. Sophie and Liz, are you happy and ready to move into Climate Action Office update? And Carrie, thank you for taking minutes. Let us know when you're needing to hop off and we'll find a backup minute taker. Thank you. I'm glad you're sitting outside in the sun. It is a beautiful, like almost 70-degree day in October in Vermont. It's pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy. So if you want to talk about maybe the interested party meetings, I could talk about cross-cutting that.
Yeah, sorry, I missed that word that you said.
Oh, the interested party meetings, and then
Oh,
I
yep.
could go over what's happening with cross-cutting.
Sure thing. Sounds good. So I'll start with, we've got some input sessions that will be scheduled for the last week of October. Oh, and hello, Beverly. She just joined. Thanks for joining. Nice to see you. So the information for these public input sessions, which will be for members of the public, especially people or entities who are interested in or impacted by a particular subject area, to come talk to the subcommittees about what the subcommittees are working on. So those will occur in the last week of October and the first 2 weeks of November. Those will be on our calendar really soon. I'm working on getting those links and descriptions up right now. So we'll send out an email once all of those are available so that you're aware of them. So far, we have 4 of those that are kind of clear on like when they're going to be and what they're going to be about. There's going to be one about buildings and thermal, so the heating and cooling of our buildings. That's going to be in October, the last week of October, with the cross-sector mitigation subcommittee and specifically their task group that's working on the buildings and thermal sector. Then there's going to be one. There's going to be 2 for the rural resilience and adaptation subcommittee, kind of covering the full breadth of what they've been working on. One is going to be geared around organizations that lend support to municipalities. The other is going to be geared around small businesses and organizations that lend support to businesses. So similar content, but different audiences. Then we've got the second one of cross-sector mitigation is going to be on transportation with a particular focus on public transportation. They're really interested in hearing from micro and on-demand and fixed route public transportation. And so that's the 2 each for cross-sector and rural resilience. And I know maybe that's like a lot to take in, but we'll definitely send the email out. It'll be on the website and you'll have all the information if you're interested in attending. Or if you know of people or entities who these meetings are relevant to, who you want to share them with. So those are the 4 that are scheduled. We're also going to have 2 for Agriculture and Ecosystem Subcommittee, but those aren't scheduled just yet. And we're going to have 2 that we'll get some support from regional planning commissions on, that will be geared towards municipalities themselves. So elected officials, town staff, any like volunteers on town commissions and such. So that gives you kind of the breadth of what these input sessions are about. They're relevant to Just Transition Subcommittee as, public engagement and how that engagement and input gets reflected in the plan. So we're kind of at this key moment where these subcommittees and their task groups have a general direction and some ideas about what they're going to be recommending, and they still have time to incorporate feedback from the public. So that's why these are happening when they're happening. I think that's the broad overview and all I had to share, but I'll pause in case there's any questions, thoughts.
See Matthew's hand. Go ahead, Matthew.
Thank you, Sophia, for bringing that up. Yeah, how the big question is, GMT. Huh, that's the biggest question we have right now, because we do not know their outlook, what's going to be happening, because they're literally in a $3 million hole, so they gotta somehow cut services. So we don't know exactly what's going to happen with that avenue. So, and that's on a, as of right now, that's on a holding pattern. They're just taking public comments about it, but that's literally in a holding pattern. So we would like to approach them with it, but like I said, that's going to be tricky if they're trying to cut services, to cut the deficit of 3 million that they have to, unfortunately, try to get that resolved as soon as possible. So that is going to be, should be part of a conversation, because that's going to affect everything we do here with public transportation, because that's going to be the majority of what next now, because if they have to cut services, that may impact our mission or our goals of trying to achieve that resilient, making sure that we'll still want to be clean, but that might be impactful, just to put that on people's radars. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. I've been thinking about that a lot as well, and I'm sure we'll be part of the discussion. And if you'd like to show up and share your thoughts on it, I'd encourage you to attend. And for the intersection between emissions reduction, resilience, and equity and access to a basic need really does it's such an intersectional issue.
And I would assume that that's known to the subcommittee, but they're aware of Green Mountain Transit's circumstance.
I would assume so. I can't speak directly for them because I haven't been in their meetings. I would be really surprised if they were not aware of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've been hearing about this from multiple people. Yeah.
Is there anything that you want to share with us, Sophie, about how kind of outreach or promotion might be happening in an effort to sort of ensure that kind of impacted communities are aware of the sessions?
Yeah, so the process so far is the subcommittees and task groups have kind of provided us with an initial list of impacted entities and people who they think would be good to hear from, relevant to hear from. It's not going to stop there, though. They've kind of provided this initial list. Climate Action Office is helping to further expand that list. That's, I think, also an avenue for Just Transitions members to plug in and perhaps make some recommendations about other people or entities who should be at the table. And as I mentioned, we'll share these details out with you. So also, if you want to further the invitation, share the invitation out with people who you think would be interested and / or impacted, that would be wonderful as well. I'll just add to that that we're doing these sort of like direct invitations to these identified parties who like we really want to make sure that their voices are heard at the table, and we're also spreading the word more broadly so everyone is welcome. And we've been since the engagement work at the Climate Action Office has really gotten off the ground, we've sort of expanded like the listservs and community partners that we are in touch with to spread the word. So we're also going to put to use that broader outreach strategy beyond just those sort of like one-to-one invitations. Also welcome any ideas that people have at this time. Very open to hearing thoughts on spreading the word.
I have a thought, but I'm curious if other members of the subcommittee have suggestions on possibly how we could assist in the dissemination of the events or more targeted outreach.
I wonder, and I sort of informed Sophie a little bit about this, but at least at Capstone, we have a weekly newsletter that goes out. So just announcing, upcoming public meetings and stuff like that to all of our participants in our areas would be fantastic. And I'm thinking the other CAP agencies also have one.
Thank you. That's a great idea.
There's Matthew. Yes. Yes, I think that's what Denise has said is a great idea. Just have a newsletter out that I think if we do it because we have something already in place, maybe send these newsletters out with the regional planning commissions of Vermont. Make it easier. Use that plus more cost effective if we use that method, going to them because we got to approach them anyway with some of this stuff. So it's like, using them as help me help you, but help us all come together so if they know everything that we know, then the message might be even more fluent. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Very good point.
Thank you.
What do you think about sharing the invite lists with this subcommittee so they could add names of individuals or organizations that they feel are missing?
Yes. So let me show you all how to find them and see them. And I want to acknowledge that this is like it requires a couple steps on the internet. And so if that is not your jam, you can also just email me directly with your ideas. Give me 1 second. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to put a link in the chat that we've shared with everyone at certain points. That is for the Climate Council's SharePoint site, where you'll find all of the folders and documents related to Climate Council work. And this year we organized it a little more so that you can go to the folder of your subcommittee and just see things related to your subcommittee. So for you all, that's the Just Transition Subcommittee. But these these input sessions are organized around 3 other subcommittees that are doing the bulk of the drafting / update recommendations work. So instead of Just Transition Subcommittee, you're going to want to go to either cross-sector mitigation, agriculture and ecosystems, or rural resilience. So I'll hop into rural resilience so we can see what that looks like. Once you're in any of those folders, you'll see these 4 folders, and you're going to want to go to documents to find those draft lists. in documents, I know there's a lot of stuff in here. You're going to want to find the one that says stakeholder meeting invitation list. So it's going to have the subcommittee's name at the front of it. So each of the file names will be slightly different. If you look for stakeholder meetings, that will bring you to the list. And when you click on this, it should open for you an Excel file that you are able to edit. I know some people have had issues accessing this. So if that's the case for you, let me know and I can try and, Liz or I can try and troubleshoot with you. Or if you're just like, this is too many internet steps, this is not my thing, but I have ideas, just send me an email and I'll make sure to get your ideas in here. But you can see that there are tabs at the bottom. So all of the drafting subcommittees get 2 of these meetings. So there's 2 tabs at the bottom divided up by the 2 different meetings there are. This one is actually new to me. So that's how you can see what ideas are out there so far. And you should have access to edit this by signing into your partner email account. So it's your name at partner.vermont.gov.
That's great. I'm so glad that this is accessible. Can you just give us one additional detail if there were additional organizations or names that we wanted to suggest? Do we just add it, or is there a particular place, or is that what others to hear from is intended for?
Yeah, so great question, Abby. So you'll see that there's kind of 2, wait, did I do that with this one? Let me go back to cross sector actually, because I need to do some updates to rural resilience for it to match. So again, documents, then look for the one that says stakeholder meeting invitation list, open that. So we've got in here, you'll see direct invitation. So if you're like, I know a specific person or entity, this is a suggestion. Okay, bike ahead, let's get local motion at the table, for example. You could fill it in there. There's also a section further down for like listservs. For example, Denise's idea and Matthew's idea about like the RPC listservs or the Community Action Agency listservs where it's more of a wider blast. You can put that down here. Also, if you just put it in there, we'll be in there and we'll be cleaning stuff up. So don't worry too much about like where exactly it goes. We'll be able to sort it out and clean things up. And I realized that when I said sign in with your partner account, let me show you when you click that link to our folders, shared folders, which I recommend like bookmarking or saving in an easy to access place. I know we've sent that out in a couple emails, but it can be like tricky to dig that up again. So if you want to access this regularly, I recommend saving it somewhere you can find it quickly. But to edit documents, you're going to have to click this sign in button in the upper right hand corner, and that will prompt you to give your login details. But you should be able to look at everything without signing in. It's really the editing of documents that you'll be required to sign in for. So I know that was a lot of information, but hopefully it was helpful.
Thank you. Anybody else try Access to see if you're able to get in with your partner email? Maybe try it at another time and get back to you, Sophie, if it's not working, and or if there's just direct suggestions. That's another great way to just reach out to you. So thank you. Any other questions around these stakeholder, or no, what you didn't call them stakeholder, you called them something specific.
Yeah, we're calling them input sessions.
Input sessions, thank you.
Feel a little more jargony, a little less jargony, and a little more directly about like, what are we doing here? So we're calling them input sessions, but a similar word that people sometimes use is stakeholder meetings. And sometimes stakeholder meetings can kind of be perceived as like a small thing. We are like specifically inviting people who are like impacted by these actions to be there. But these are broader and open to the public, and anyone's welcome to come and to speak.
All right, are we ready to move off of input sessions or any other questions or comments? Okay, thanks, Sophie. Liz, are we moving to you?
Yeah, so I'll just go over where we are with the cross-cutting pathway group meetings. We are in the last 2 weeks of October having the cross-cutting pathway groups, which are education, workforce development, and compact settlement meet. They'll have 2 meetings, both of which will be public meetings where representatives from each drafting subcommittee will be present alongside state implementers to look at reviewing existing pathway strategies and actions within these different groups, identifying opportunities for advancement, very similar to how the task groups are working right now. The difference is just that these are different cross-cutting groups, so that's why they have representatives from each drafting subcommittee. But again, these are public, so if you're interested in attending, you're welcome to. We're working on scheduling them. They're not on the calendar yet, but they will be, and they'll be taking place in the last 2 weeks of October.
Liz? Any questions or feedback about those cross-cutting meetings, topic-based meetings? I presume we'll see announcements of those as well as an email or something.
Yeah, we'll be sharing out once they're scheduled. Yep.
Okay. Okay. So Sophie or Liz, I'm not sure which of you wants to talk about the climate action plan kind of revision to the section that's most relevant to this subcommittee, and then update on the graphic designer and copy editor for the new plan.
Yeah, happy to jump in. These are mostly updates for everybody's awareness. I think we can have a conversation around the chapter in the climate action plan that Just Transitions is involved in. It's fairly short, so in the agenda you'll see a link, and it says the page number. It's page 48. So if you haven't had a chance to read through that, give that a read when you have a moment. I think it's only like 3 or 4 pages long. But basically that's the chapter. Oh, thanks, Abby. That link is in the chat now, page 48. That chapter is the one that Just Transitions is sort of responsible for updating. I'll note for you that there is also a chapter on public engagement, which the Climate Action Office and Just Transition Subcommittee can work together on. That one's not due till kind of later in the process, once all the public engagement has actually been done and we can report back on it. So we don't have to worry about that one yet. But the one that will be due sooner, I think, I need to pull up the schedule, but I think it's kind of due in February or March, is all about building equity into the climate action plan and how is that being done? What are things that still need to be done? So for as a first step, just wanted to flag that all for everybody's awareness that this chapter exists. Just Transitions will play a role in updating it, and the process for that is, to be discussed amongst you all of how exactly you want to go about that. Then the other update that I don't think needs too much discussion at this point, but wanted to let you all know, is that this year we're working really hard to try and get a graphic designer and copy editor contractor so that the climate action plan can be readable to the average person. So likely there will be like a couple appendices that like get a little more technical and get into the weeds, but we want something that captures the breadth of the work, tells some stories, have some visuals, is laid out well, incorporates plain language as best it possibly can. And in order to do that, we're we're going to need to enlist the services of a graphic designer, a copy editor. I'm hoping we can get a photographer involved as well. I'm also going to be doing a bunch of work to like source photography from other programs in the state that might already have some good photo assets. So just wanted to let you all know that that's on the docket. I'm really excited about it. I think that Just Transitions could play a role in looking at drafts and commenting from a plain language or accessibility perspective. And we're currently kind of mapping out sort of that whole process. So just kind of letting you know for now, and I'll be excited to fold you all in on the review levels. That makes sense.
Thanks, Sophie. Any questions around kind of like the climate action plan, copy edit, design update that Sophie offered? I do want to come back to the chapter or the section within the climate action plan component. So I might do just a quick screen share of this section, and just have a quick conversation about maybe what the recommended process may be for updating this section. Typically, we have done that type of editing in small subgroup and then brought recommendations back to the full subcommittee for discussion, edit, review, and then approval. So as Sophie said, so this is I'm showing just a page from the full climate, original climate action plan. And you'll see, if you haven't kind of had a chance yet to check this out, this is one section called Building Equity into the CAP and Ensuring a Just Transition. Sure. Sorry about that. So I think one of the questions when this was written, it was time appropriate in that it was acknowledging that one of the tasks and awareness of the Climate Council was the need to have some just transition guidance provided in the climate action plan development process. And it feels like there's obviously some language here that could and should be updated based on where we are now in the process, so that the guiding principles exist, and the subcommittee has continued to meet and things have really kind of evolved. So that's what this first piece is, just sort of a little bit of background, talking about some of the training and conversations that happened with the council, the development of the guiding principles, so how the just transition guiding principles were developed and established. I'm just going to kind of scroll through so you can just see what the length of this section is that we're tasked with updating. A few definitions around equity and around impacted and frontline communities. This is outlining the 6 principles that kind of continue to be the foundation of the guiding principles document. And then referencing the self-assessment and scoring rubric. So this currently clearly doesn't include the new visual that we'll talk about in a bit, that obviously wasn't developed at the time that this section of the plan was drafted. And that's it. And then it just makes reference to that the actual documents are captured in the appendices. So I'm going to stop sharing. Does anyone have kind of a recommendation of how you might propose that the subcommittee embraces updating and editing this section of the plan for the February deadline?
Maybe if a couple people took a section at, each group took a section to go over and to edit if needs to be updated. That way one person or two people aren't tasked with the whole thing.
Okay.
That would be a suggestion that I would make.
Beverly, are you thinking that people would sign up for a particular section, or that we'd have an expectation that everyone would be involved, or only those that are interested?
Well, I would hope that everybody would be interested.
Okay. And Matthew.
Yes, I do think visual comparison or like a visual chart might help speed up the process, because there's nothing, the way I look at it, there's not, like you said, it hasn't been updated, and visual cues tend to get the heart of the picture, and not a lot of, individuals, I'm seeing what you're saying, but I can't see what you're, what it is. I got to have a graph or a chart to tell me the bigger forward picture of what we're doing here. And like the legislator, they can't move forward or vote consciously if they don't have what they need to get things, so they can see what's going on. So I do think um the visual access piece, to this will definitely, bring a more clearer picture to what we're getting at. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Matthew. I think a question that I have is just a little bit around what's the purpose and intention around this updated climate action plan. Is it just like, what's the audience? What do we hope to achieve by updating the plan, and therefore this section? And I agree. I think there's a real opportunity to do to consider accessibility, sort of some visual representation, as well as this is where I think your plain language resource link that you shared would also be valuable for the groups that are drafting or updating to consider.
For me, I think that updating it would be a way to be able to document what has been done to date, and possibly document the stumbling blocks that are still in place.
Great.
I agree with that, Beverly. I was just also wondering if it's a point to reflect on like some of the gaps that we felt when we did the original cap, and then how both like stumbling blocks that are still in place, but actually things that happened differently this time. Like, I don't know if this would be an appropriate place to talk about the Climate Action Office and the engagement they've done with CBI, which I feel like really came out of what we learned last time, and thinking about how we implement some of the visual, but yeah, so, but I really appreciate what you said, Beverly.
I wonder.
So hello, it's
Oh yeah,
Bruce
please,
Wilson.
Bruce, welcome.
Yeah. So when you use the word equity, what does that mean? When you use the word equity, I mean, what does that mean? Because a lot of times I hear the word equity in like everything. It's like it's just I never heard through college they say you buy a house, one day you'll have equity, but so now it's like everybody's using the word equity, and so I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what it means. I always ask what it means because it sounds like it might be like equity might mean like inclusive, or what do you mean by that? Use the word equity in there.
I have a
President.
short definition in our policy assessment tool that came from the Office of Racial Equity here in Vermont. And it is, let's pull up that document. equity, the condition that would be achieved when a person's race or other demographic group membership is no longer predictive of that person's outcome. So it's very broad.
Thank you. And
Doesn't mean that we're adopting it. It's just the one that we're using at Capstone.
yeah, yeah. And so just so you know, I don't know if you know, but I'm also the Human Rights Commissioner for the state of Vermont. And I heard you guys talk about GMT and RPC, Regional Planning Commission. And so if I can help with those, because I'm a part of those. I'm on the board of directors for Regional Planning Commission, and I work with Vermont Trans on the JEDI board. So if anywhere I can do anything special, or like get something going, please let me know. That's what I do. But so for me, that the equity part of it, because I've seen a lot of different things with anti-racism stuff. It's like now it's like a new buzzword to use, and I always get cringed up when I hear it, because I think when people use equity, it's about people who look like me and you, Denise. But I'm not sure. But I just I have to ask the question: what does it mean? I mean, when you use it,
Any demographic that's been negatively impacted.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Bruce, for the question. I always think definitions are so important, and like, where are we starting from? And I just took a peek at that chapter that we were just talking about in the climate action plan that Just Transitions is to update, and wrote from the original one. And there's like a four-part definition in there. So I just pasted that in the chat. So I was glad to see that there is one, but that's maybe something to look at also. Is that still the right definition?
Oh, hi, this is Carrie. It might be interesting to look. I was on the steering committee when VTrans did their equity and transportation framework. And one of the questions, one of the consultant teams asked all the different participants in the project was, what did the question Bruce just asked, and the range of responses was really different. And I don't have it on my fingertips right now, but I think that is a worthwhile. It is worthwhile just seeing how long that definition posted in the chat is, and thinking about plain language, coming up with a way simply of what equity means. And maybe Denise's definition is that the Office of Racial Equity uses is good, but it would be interesting to see what VTrans wound up settling on too.
Yeah, I think that, English is my second language. And as such, English is very confusing because you have one word that can have 20 different meanings. And the many boards that I sit on, that question comes up a lot. What is equity? And I think you're going to always find that there are 20 different definitions of equity. And maybe what we need to do is we need to decide what we think equity is and the definition that we choose to use. Because English is a confusing language, and a lot of people do not understand what equity means. A lot of people think of equity as you buy a house and you build up equity in it. And I have to admit, that's what I thought when I first heard it. And now I'm more confused than ever.
When we came up with this 4-point language, so was it the intention that we would apply each of those 4 sub-definitions of equity to each part of the plan? Somebody who was here.
Denise, I'm sorry, will you repeat your question? I was copying something from the chat.
I'm looking at this lovely 4-part definition of the different types of equity.
Yes.
right? And as we're going through the plan and applying, what is it the intention that we apply each of these 4 sub-definitions to each part of the plan to ensure equity?
What? I don't remember a specific conversation around that intention. I think these, if I'm remembering, and I could check, are included in the kind of preamble, like foundational context of the guiding principles. And I think they were sort of the starting point. Carrie or Abby or Beverly maybe could correct me if my memory.
I'm just saying this because
Yeah.
I'm concerned that anything we have in the plan we're actually utilizing.
Yeah, and I think they sort of founded the foundation from where the guiding principles came from, and then the assessment questions flowed from them. But I don't think, to answer your question, it was the intention that these 4 definitions will then flow in like explicitly. I think they were more foundational as the subcommittee started doing its work. But it's a good point in terms of we have a lot of different terminology in the guiding principles document.
I don't remember anything different than what Claire has described. I see Claire nodding as well. Matthew,
Yeah,
I
I
see
don't remember
you being
anything
patient.
either.
Okay, thanks, Carrie.
Yeah, I have my hand up. Just let you know. Yes. I think it's trying to not just at the definition of equity. I think it's trying to simplify that language and its meaning. That's the reason the plain language comes in. Is try to simplify some of this. Language, and that's another part. Of why we need plain language, it's to simplify it, make it easier. It's like trying to get at where it could be comprehensible, meaning you can understand it in a way where, oh, just now I know what this equity means. It just and that's where I think the plain language aspect piece of it is, it all revolves around plain language and how we use that language. And that's basically how we get to basically to make the message that we're saying more for not just for us as the transition, climate change transition, members, but it helps the organization or the climate council as a whole of trying to make this, easier to understand, because some of the climate council stuff, I mean, it's tricky, complex, and out of reach for some. And that's where this plain language might be very useful and helpful to simplify what we're talking about too as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you as well. So it's 4:55, which is when we had in the agenda that we were going to pause for public comment. I'm not seeing members of the public here, but I'd like to still just give it a minute or two in case someone were to join us and hold space for that opportunity. And then the vision was that we would kind of keep moving in the agenda. And so I have a proposal for public comment that I'd like to offer for a next step and see if that might help get us towards a revision to this section of the climate action plan that incorporates all the great discussion that we've had. So let's just take a quick pause and see if in the next minute or so anyone from the public wants to join us and offer any public comment this evening. I'm just going to hold for till our time changes to 4:57. See if anyone joins. Okay. Not seeing anyone from the public here this evening. If anyone does join us, we can pause our discussion and hold space for them. So my proposal would be, how would it feel if a few individuals prepared an outline for what the revised section might look like and brought it back to the subcommittee or even shared it by email? And I have to be careful, I guess, about that, but finding a way to sort of provide an outline, and then there could be, as you proposed, Beverly, individuals sort of sign up to work on a particular section. I feel like at this point we have kind of like that the document as it existed, but a few suggestions around a slightly different and more expansive outline for the new plan. So if there was a group that assembled that and brought that to the November meeting, and then we used time at the November meeting to identify which section individual subcommittee members wanted to work on, do you feel like that would provide enough time for groups to meet in, say, November and December and be able to bring a draft version back for discussion in January? And then maybe any additional edits that's needed, and then a final version of the section by February? That feel like a reasonable plan and timeline? Yeah, Claire.
That seems reasonable to me. It seems like we're not talking about an overly extensive
No.
section. And I'm happy to participate in that group. It's helpful.
Thank you.
I would be willing to participate in one of the groups too, to do an outline, because that seems like a reasonable timeline.
Thanks, Beverly. Matthew.
Yes, for me, it's like we got to remember, like I said, for me, it's like, uh, we got to also remember that, not everybody could be there. Like I said, I'm already, committed. I'm already, well past, so I won't be able to attend it due to it. To me, it's like, on my part, I won't be able to attend. So I'm already doing 12 different subcommittees across the state, and some of that's not easy work. But like I said, it's, for me, it's like, it was something, if people have time. That's one thing I want to bring up is if individuals from subcommittees have the extra time to put towards this work, because like I said, some of us are already tapped out, and believe me, 12 subcommittees is already at my limit. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks I appreciate that this is an option available for those who have capacity and interest, and that may not be every member of the subcommittee, and I appreciate you offering that. Hi, Mona. Welcome.
Hi,
Nice to have you this evening.
thank you. Thank you.
Just to give you a catch up on where we are in the agenda is talking about the building equity in the cap and ensuring a just transition section of the climate action plan. And we've just kind of proposed a process and a bit of a timeline for our subcommittee's updates to that section. And it sounds like we'll also have an opportunity to provide input on the public engagement section that we could also do as we learn more how that fits into discussion at a January or February meeting.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. Nice to see you.
Okay. Abby, I don't know if I can
Yeah.
help with the outline because my next couple of weeks are pretty busy and I don't know if I have the capacity, but I'm happy to help with coordinate the writing part later. I think
Great.
one thing I brought up during our co-chairs meeting was that, in order to write this section, there may be a need to consult with the other subcommittees to understand how they have used equity over the course of the last 5 years, because that seems like part of the accountability role this committee, should be asking for, to summarize like what was done. Who knows? And maybe we can even suss out what what does equity mean to some of those subcommittees too. Like, I don't think we should be writing this chapter alone.
And also how they are measuring it, you know, this is very important.
I think that's a really great point. I'm curious if the group that maybe develops the outline could also prepare a few questions for liaisons to bring to other subcommittees to ask, kind of the general question of like, what have you done to center equity? And yeah, how is that different than kind of the first plan?
Or
Okay,
just
so
thinking out loud, Abby, that sounds
Yeah.
like some of the questions we asked the subcommittee to talk about
Uh-huh.
already in the visual we created. So
Yeah.
maybe part of the, maybe we don't need a separate set of questions, but we need to maybe let the subcommittees know that information is useful for writing this section of the plan.
Okay.
Because I think we asked, well, we'll get to the visual later. But anyway, I think there's some opportunity to tie in with that timeline.
Great. I love that suggestion of that we can't write this alone. Okay.
So I have a comment.
Yes, please.
If equity is part of the meaning, 20 different meanings, and it's probably one meaning, like a person like me, a BIPOC, if that means like, being included, inclusiveness, then I think when we ask that question to the other committees, we need to ask the person who looks like me to, what it means to them. I think that's it. I think that's important. That's what all I gotta say. And if also equity means the inclusiveness of a person who like me, a person of color, BIPOC, whatever, then I think when we get the language for it, we need to at least ask a person who looks like me, what does equity mean to them? So we have to get some right words in there. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious if there's a way that the public engagement efforts that the Consensus Building Institute has engaged in could provide that. I'm just trying to be realistic about like, is this subcommittee really going to do another whole series of public engagement with BIPOC population to ask that question, even though it's a really important question? I don't know. And so I'm wondering if that may have been captured in the public engagement efforts that are already being done. Sophie, what do you think? Does that feel like that's something that's reasonable to come out of the work of CBI team?
We can definitely look at sort of the feedback and input we've collected thus far. And I think that can be a really equitable way of, or maybe I should not use the word equitable before defining what I mean, but that can be a really helpful way to put community engagement that's already been done to the best use and not like overburden people again and again if we already have asked them that question and have that information. So I can definitely kind of look through what we have and see kind of the range of things we've been hearing related to that. Another thought I have in hearing your comment, Bruce, is there's kind of a combination of working with the subcommittees and hearing what they've done, and this subcommittee just transitions playing a role in saying like, here's what we mean by equity, so that it's a both and that hopefully that this chapter could reflect all of the voices of subcommittee members of just transition. So I don't know if that completely checks the, like what you're getting at. But that was something that kind of came to mind in response to your comment.
Well, what I'm getting at is that, and I thank you for those comments, is that if you're going to use the word equity and it has something to do with including a person who look like me, then you need to have to feel it in your mind, your body, and your soul. You need to feel equity, what it really means. So I want the people, how are we going to get better in this world if we don't, actually know, we instead of using the $1 million word equity, the buzzword, using that word and not really understanding what it means, about how we're using it. That's all I want people to do. That's all I want the subcommittee to do. That's all I want everybody to do is look at equity and that's oh, that's a good word to use. I like inclusiveness better than equity actually, but it's a cheaper word, But so I'm trying to say is people should gotta feel, they gotta understand for real. You know what I'm saying? Are we gonna make a change in this, what we're trying to do? How are we gonna get better if we don't really feel it for our mind, body, and soul? You gotta feel it. You gotta understand what it means. You know what I mean? So that's all I'm trying to say. Even Google probably gonna give you a good definition of equity. They can just Google it and it's gonna say something about diversity, equity, and inclusion too. I'm sure of it. So that's all I'm trying to say. We gotta, if we're gonna make a change, let's make a real change for real. Thank you. And it starts with ourselves, right? That's right.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I love the concept of feeling it, Bruce. Thank you so much for sharing that. Claire and then Denise.
Well, so Sophie mentioned a little bit, but Bruce's comments made me feel like that it would be important for this subcommittee to define in the chapter how we approach incorporating our, I think we've determined we have a couple different definitions of equity into the process, but I feel like if I were to reflect on that, it is largely through taking the guiding principles document and the questions and trying to infuse them into the actions, like the way the process was structured, but being really specific about the strategies that were taken and what lens that was coming through, in addition to kind of this broader question of how are we actually defining equity in and of itself, because I think I totally agree that question is big and important. We should be crystal clear on what we're trying to achieve. And also, I think that we would be able to say, outside of a specific definition, like these are the strategies we took to try and achieve these objectives founded in this set of principles. And that also provides, I feel like, an opportunity for folks who read the plan and read that reflection to tell us, well, we would have approached it differently, or maybe your definition is a little off. But for what that's worth, that feels like an important piece to incorporate.
And of course, representing VCAP, I know we don't do the nitty-gritty implementation of the plan, and it would help if we had language throughout about climate change disproportionately affects low-income people, and it's horrible. And the reason I like it mentioned in the plan is I went to an HHAV conference last week, which was wonderful. And in our breakout sessions, I had to bring up that like 3 times before people were willing to talk about it. Poverty.
Yeah, I think our guiding principles are great. But I just want to, I wonder sometimes who is looking at them and who is trying to implement anything in accordance with the recommendations. When I heard about, VTrans cutting routes, I was like, I feel like we're going backwards. I don't feel like, the larger climate council is really, really invested in making sure that everyone in the state has access to what they need to help mitigate this climate change that we're in. And they're not even considering, you know, with public transportation, I've heard no mention of the houseless people and the people who depend on that to get places. But no one talks about that. So, you know, I find myself getting increasingly frustrated when I see ads on television talking about, you know, how many electric cars we have in Vermont. You know, that I'm sure that there are people in areas of each town that couldn't even conceive of having a car, much less an electric car, and depend on public transportation, which is being cut. You know, that's what goes through my mind.
Really, I'm really excited, or not excited, that's the wrong term. I'm grateful that you bring up these issues, and I wonder if there's a way that we can at least acknowledge these gaps as part of this new section to the plan. I'd love to think that we may have suggestions towards a solution, and if we can do that, that would be wonderful. But if at a minimum, I think making space for it, identifying it as a gap and as a challenge, I think feels really missing and valuable. And I know that this has been something that you've brought up many times, and I want to really think about, like, how do we, like, pay kind of respect to this topic in a real tangible way.
You know, paying respect to the topic is one thing, but where is the action behind that respect?
Mm-hmm.
Where is the action that's going to actually impact and make lives better for people who are so very marginalized? And those people are not just in the bigger cities like Burlington and Bennington and Brattleboro. There's a lot of them in these small towns that are kind of stuck there sometimes.
I mean, I'll throw this out there, and it's probably not super helpful, but to just think about this, like, I've been working in the government bureaucratic system for a long time, and the place where all the power for change is in the budget and how the money's allocated. And like, this committee doesn't have any input on that, which seems like a disconnect to me. And I don't know, like, we can fix that right now in this meeting, but to me, that's a huge part of, like, somebody else made a decision. We're going to use this money to fund electric car incentives or to install more heat pumps, not to, you know, further subsidize the mass transit, which is helping a lot of people also, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're just not in touch with any of that decision making, and we find out about it after a decision's been made. And then it's like, well, that decision's already been made.
And that's why I think that it's important to make enough noise and cause enough good trouble to get their attention.
You know, a lot of
I
the,
realize
sorry,
everything you just said. I know that we have no power over how the money is allocated. And there are people who are making those decisions who really don't give a rat's bottom about what people that look like me, that look like Bruce, that are like Matthew, oh, Denise, that what we're doing. They don't really care whether we are part of the solution or not. So that's where my frustration comes in, that we don't, even as we're making these recommendations and submitting these documents, it feels sometimes like it's just checking off a box for them.
So Denise, I see your hand, but I want to go to Matthew, who's had his hand, and then, okay, thank you.
Yes, and thank you, Denise, Beverly, and Bruce for bringing those up. I meant, that gets to me at the heart of this. And, what I see, what's going on, and yeah, it is like check marking what Beverly said. It is true. It's like check marking out the box. It's what can I get out of it, And Vermont has that. I see Vermont has some kind of, ain't just political power, but I see classism and privilege, literally, let's call for what it is. White privilege is dominating anything or anyone that's in that power that are not like what Bruce says. They're not like us. Let's be honest. And it's hard to, try to discuss that with your neighbors um that these difficult challenges, it hurts us literally. It literally hurting. It hurts me. It hurts people of color. It hurts individuals that just want to make a living but trying to do the right thing, and it just makes it hard for us to do that important work because it's if it ain't racism, it's classism. If it ain't classism, it's oh we see Vermont's culture this way. We have a particular way of seeing it, particular rules of setting things in stone. So it's like you're gonna have to live with what we put forward and just live the way it is. Like Beverly says, it's like that check mark. It's put in place and pretty much we made a decision. Um, no discussion about it. Which should be that there's that big disconnect if you can't connect to those marginalized communities because, like I said, we have voting power too as well. It's just it seems like our voices are skewed from any conversation. It's like we'll bring you in to have you discuss this, but we're using you as what you call tokenization, just to check mark off the box. But when you're done, we just don't. We didn't even put it on file. We didn't even put you on record. It's just to get you out of our hair at this point. Which that's what most people of color are seeing is, and myself am seeing this across the work that I do is. We're just we're just another number or we're just another checkbox just to make Vermont look good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Matthew. Stark and troubling reality. Yeah. Denise.
Thank you so much for that, Matthew. And that circles back to what I witnessed at HHAV and at the legislature, people who want to do good things, but come from middle class to upper middle class backgrounds or are not BIPOC and don't really understand. We know that helping people get electric cars did not go deep enough or wide enough, right? Because like Beverly said, there are poor people who could not take advantage of that program. So two things. If we sprinkle the document, because what I know about implementers is a lot of them are data heads. They want to see some data. And EAN has great data around effects on BIPOC, effects on poor people. And I'm wondering if just a little blurb or 2 or 3 of data might help those who actually read this and help implement it. The other thing is, we may not be able to lobby, but VCAP has hired Action Circles, a lobbying firm. And if we have that information sprinkled throughout, there's no reason they couldn't use that language as sound bites at the State House if they chose to. I know I'm walking a fine line here, okay? But if they chose to.
Denise, I just want to make sure I'm fully understanding. You're suggesting that there could be data that speaks to the impact on BIPOC populations incorporated into this section of the plan revision?
BIPOC and poor. Not all BIPOCs are poor. There are a lot of poor white Vermonters disproportionately impacted by climate change. A lot. So just to get some numbers in there and some information in there so that the middle class folks who really want to do good work can get over the fear that poverty is somehow contagious. You know, it's okay to look at it and see what we can do about it. I know they don't think Black is contagious. And thank you, Bruce and Matthew and Beverly for bringing it up. For BIPOCs, it's just not seen. It's just not seen. So just some data sprinkled in there. Oh, you know, in Vermont, BIPOC communities are impacted at a rate that is disproportional to white communities with some data.
Callie, I'm seeing your suggestions around kind of a recommendation of incorporating participatory budgeting. Do you want to, anything you want to offer about that to the group?
I'm not an expert on it. It just made me think, I think it was Beverly who said that or somebody brought up, maybe it was Carrie. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time. I got my COVID and flu shot earlier. My brain's a little off. But somebody brought up the fact that we, the subcommittee, don't have any direct control over budgeting, and that is oftentimes like put your money where your mouth is, kind of like where the rubber meets the road and kind of shows priorities, like where a government or where an entity directs its money speaks to its values and priorities. And I've seen some, information about participatory budgeting used on different scales and how it has, some positive impacts on like transparency and civic participation and that sort of thing. So I'm not an expert on it. I'm sure there's, a lot of information out there about it, but I don't know if there's a possibility for us to, talk about that, make some mention of it, have resources included in the chapter that we have some control over the content of. Just a thought.
Thank you for that suggestion. So I have a list of a lot of and I'm sure Carrie's captured much of this in the minutes as well, but of like suggestions to be considered for this revised section of the plan. Claire and Beverly have offered to be part of developing that outline. I'm happy to also join that group. Anyone else feeling so moved to be a part of developing the outline? Denise? Okay. Great. Let's start with the outline and see where that gets us. We can share it back to the subcommittee, certainly can bring it to the November meeting and kind of continue this conversation as we then kind of design how we want to break out different sections to be drafted by the subcommittee. It feels like we have a good plan and enough time. Sophie's going to get us some feedback from the public engagement team from CBI as to whether they have captured some of those BIPOC or, various classed feedback as part of their engagement efforts that could be helpful for this section. And maybe there's an opportunity to kind of roll this into the next section of the agenda that I hope we have a few minutes, but Carrie, before you have to hop off, to chat about, which is the guiding principles visual and kind of like how that could be used as a series of questions and a tool when liaisons are connecting with other subcommittees to better understand what they're doing and or help guide, understand what they have done and help guide what they are doing as part of this next kind of revision and prioritization process of the plan. Okay, so are everyone feeling ready to move to talking about the visual? So I'm happy to offer just like very high level kind of comment here. I have not been a member of the group that has sort of put their heart and soul into this visual, but I'm attaching the link here in the chat. And I guess the piece that I wanted to offer for this part of the agenda before offering it to Carrie and Claire and others is that this was drafted as an additional tool to share with the Climate Council and the various subcommittees by this Just Transition Subcommittee. It was brought to the steering committee for discussion, review, and approval, and then to the Climate Council as well. My understanding is that both entities have sort of like given their thumbs up and signed off on this visual being kind of like officially, I'm not sure what, like supported by the team, by the group, to be able to be used as an additional kind of like supplemental tool as we are talking about just transition in centering of equity in this climate action planning process. Some of you may not have seen this tool, this new visual yet. So again, it's in the chat. It was attached in the materials that were sent out for this meeting. I also, Carrie, yeah, go ahead. I want to talk about what Kelly did, but I want to.
Yeah, I have to go soon, but I think just the my biggest like takeaway for why we developed this visual is it was in response to some of the feedback from the subcommittee, co-chairs. Sorry, it's hard to keep all these terms straight. I had my COVID vaccination 2 days ago. I thought it was better. It was in response to hearing from people on the subcommittees that like we don't know what to do. Like, we don't know where to start with these guiding principles. So it was an attempt to try to just make it more accessible, clearer, and streamlined. And we did talk about it at the last meeting, and I don't think Sophie made edits that were more visual. I don't think there was much change to the actual content.
That's right. I think there were mostly consolidation and moving things around. There was one edit that the Climate Council or Steering Committee, I can't remember, requested about the engagement events, the ones that are happening that I just talked about. Originally, the language kind of made it sound like they had to do everything, so we just revised the language to clarify that they are, advising on how those events go and that they need to attend them because they will have a lot of support by the Climate Action Office and Consensus Building Institute. So that was the only minor change that was requested by the steering committee of the Climate Council.
Yeah, Kelly.
This is just a minor sort of nitpick, at least maybe it's not, maybe it is, on the visual element. I'm not saying that this has to be changed because I recognize all the hard work that went into it. The only thing I just want to point out is we talked a little bit earlier about how a lot of this whole process feels like checking boxes, and the visual does have some literal check boxes. And as well as like a reference of, I think it's like the second circle down on the first page says complete this checklist, and it's hyperlinked and you go to it and it's another checklist. So again, I'm not saying that this has to be changed necessarily, and I don't know if there's capacity or time for that. I just kind of wanted to bring it up that was raised earlier, and this visual literally has like check boxes. So I don't know if that, I love a good checkbox list. I love my grocery list, checking things off. Like, it's good, but I just kind of wanted to raise that.
Kelly, I just want to make sure I'm following, like, is your comment that we have a checklist within a checklist?
Well, I guess also just kind of going off of the point of like this visual does seem to kind of I think I know that it's like meant to be a guide. And I think it is really useful. I just kind of wanted to name the fact that this is does kind of feel like a checklist. And we talked earlier about how a lot of this, like a lot of the efforts of, climate council and things from the state perspective often feel like we're just checking boxes to say that we've done certain things. And I just wouldn't want, people to see this as like, oh, yep, we're just checking all the things that we've done, all the things we need to do, and like going to that hyperlinked checklist that has a list of, marginalized or vulnerable groups and checking that off. And again, I'm not saying that there has to be like major changes to this document. I just wanted to call it out.
Thank you for clarifying. That's helpful for me to hear. Takes me a few times, and I had my COVID vaccine a week plus ago, so I can't blame that.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
So I guess for me, like I've lived in Vermont since 1989, so I've seen a lot of changes. And somebody told me a few days ago that it's back to the whitest state in America, which can't help that, right? Vermont is, but I just think that we'll need to make a real change for our own selves and like our attitudes and beliefs. We really like, I understand about checking the boxes and all that, but when we check those boxes, we really got to think about it. You got to put our attitudes and beliefs and what it really is. I mean, saying, oh yeah, systemic stuff, yeah, boom, 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 yeah. You just check the box. You got to really know what it means. Like a person who's living in the park. Now they're passing out tents right now for people, like, so you check the box because we kind of talked about the housing piece, but you really got to feel that stuff. You really want to make a change within yourself and within what you're trying to do when you check that box. That's not, checking the boxes that got nothing to do with, I forget her name, but nothing to do with you. I'm just like, all I'm saying is that that's how the world is. We just all just checking stuff off, and like I did this, I did that, but without putting our attitudes and beliefs, our feelings, attitudes, and beliefs within it. We're not really thinking about it when we check the box. It's just like everyday thing, like what we normally do. The light turn green, you go. You know what I mean? So and that's how it is. And like I think for me, my degree in psychology from Northwestern University, Illinois, and so I'm always, I'm a little emotional a little bit about a lot of things, especially words. If you talk to anybody with master's degrees or any degree in psychology, the words mean a lot. I mean, how do you use words? I mean, that's why psychiatrists say they want to hear you tell a story. They don't tell you that you got, they don't tell you how you feeling or whatever. They want you to tell them. So because the words mean a lot. And so for me, I just want all of us. I mean, it's the little thing we can do. Is just kind of let's think about what because we all do some very important things. We're all so important. Nobody's better than nobody, and so we just all need each other. But when we're making decisions about stuff, in about people's lives, because it's just transition and climate coalition, we actually making decisions that changes people's life. Right here in Vermont. You know what I mean? We do. And so we got to think about that, what I mean? We got to think about really, instead of just saying, oh yeah, instead of going by what our attitudes and beliefs are about something like the water or whatever. I'm gonna clear the board, put me on clean water board now. So it's gonna be a good transition working with you guys in there. But I always get a little emotional about because I'm a people person, and I just want people to, if we're gonna really make a change in this world, in life, we really got to think about the decisions we making. So I'm sorry to keep saying that, but that's what it is. I mean, it is what it is. And like that's what it is, and that's why I probably sit on all these boards. People ask me to sit on, the governor or whatever, about helping people, and so that's what I do. I ain't better than no damn body, because if I didn't have people to serve, what would I be doing? But I just want people to think about it. I love everybody. I certainly wouldn't be in Vermont from Chicago and since 1989 if I didn't love white people. That's for damn sure. So my folks helped me to love everybody, and I do. And so so I just want to make, if we're gonna make a difference, we got to really make a difference, within ourselves. Yes, ourselves first and foremost. We got to make a difference for nobody but ourselves. And then when you do that, people see how you are, and then they'll change too. So that's how where you're gonna make a diversity, equity, and inclusion, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion is the only way that's gonna really work if everybody get together and figure out what's the real good answer, based on what they learned from their grandmama, ancestral tradition, and all of that. They gotta really think about it. This can't just change. This can't change this. Because using the buzzword equity is a real powerful word, and it's rich. You wouldn't use inclusion, but when you say equity, you mean inclusion, right? Diversity, equity, you mean inclusion, but you ain't gonna use it because it's a cheap ass word. It's cheap. Equity is powerful, so that's why people use equity. And usually when people presenting, and I hear a lot of presentations, they say, when they say equity, they say, and equity, they really emphasize it, like, and then probably don't know what it means to them, feel in their house, inside their heart. They don't know what it means, but they just know it's a good word. It's a good buzzword. I can't stand it, really, equity. I cannot stand that word, because people, I mean, I love equity, don't get me wrong, but if people would know why they're saying it, why are they using that word, really, for real, why, and so it's a good word, next year we might use some other damn words, what I mean? It's not gonna be as powerful as equity, but I don't know. Just got to really think about it, especially in all the committees and boards I sit on. I'm a commissioner 3 times right now. It's a lot of stuff, but and so I'm on these boards because if I don't represent the people who look like me and other people, who's gonna do it? You know what I'm saying? Who's gonna do it? And I got to bring my voices in room too. And all I'm trying to say is, his Southside Chicago boy that's saying this. We're gonna make a difference in this world. We just gotta look at ourselves and use it and think about what the words we use. That's all I'm saying. So when you use equity, it's all right to use it, but know why you use it. What it means to you. You ain't gotta write it all out. Just know it for yourself. Not to say that, that word go. Like you write a poem. Oh, that word goes with. It's a good word to go with the poem. It's like it flows. So I'm sorry. Get right ahead, Sophie. You're up, girl.
I
I'm not
love
even
the heart
care.
that you're bringing to this conversation and to this group, Bruce. Thank you.
Yeah, I
Yes.
don't want to stop you. I just really appreciate everything you said, Bruce. Not only as a fellow word nerd, but also like getting out of the head, into the heart, into the body. And as you were talking, we're gonna get into like how this document is rolled out to the subcommittees, and sort of the idea around that was we have these liaisons between just transitions and the other subcommittees, and those liaisons would present the visual and say, this is how you use it. And I think that exactly what you're saying should be part of that, of like, this is supposed to help you go through the process. And like, let's not forget that this is a process of heart and soul, like, and self-reflection, and really like do internal work. And I wonder, we have liaison set up. Callie, you're a liaison to cross-sector, right? I can never remember exactly who's what, but I think Callie's a liaison, Sam Lash is a liaison, Danielle is a liaison, and I'm forgetting 1 or 2 other people. But what if this is just an idea I'm throwing out there. And again, I don't mean to put more work on people's plates. So it's just an idea, just an invitation. But maybe there's an invitation for another Just Transition subcommittee member to show up to that meeting and kind of co-present and say their piece about like, here's what this means to me and here's why I think this is really important, and get a little bit more at that heart and take it out of the head space. I think the purpose of the visual is to help people go step by step and make sure they're actually doing the work. But we don't want to that at the expense of we want to make sure that inner work isn't lost. So I wonder just what you all might think of incorporating that into the intention, which is that like the next subcommittee meetings that happen, they're all holding space on their agenda to talk about incorporating the guiding principles and making sure that that discussion isn't just like intellectual.
Can I just say one more thing? And that, and like climate is mean the same as environment, and climate is like it ain't nothing bigger than that for real in this world. You know what I'm saying? Ask the people in Florida about the climate and environmental and what happened to them with all the different storms, and even here ourselves in Vermont. Climate is like that's everything. That's all. Even we're the climate. Our whole body is made up of all these cells, and everything about us is climate. For real, you know that. You know us. You know we drink the water. Everything about us is climate. That's why we want to make sure it's good, right? We want to make sure everything is nice and clean and fresh and whatever, you know. But it means everything. So when we use words that we're talking about, everything in the world, everything, the environment, you know, the dirt, everything. You know what I mean? That's in climate. So that's when you making and talking about climate, and you on these advisory boards or these boards, you got to know what you're dealing with, and that's everything in this world. Everything that matters on this earth is the climate. Everything.
Beverly.
Yeah, I think that guiding principles are great. I think that, having a climate council is nice. But where, like Bruce says, are we really thinking about why are we doing this work? I'm doing this work because I have grandchildren who will have children, who will have children, and I want there to be a planet that is livable for them when they are born. And at the rate we're going right now, that's not likely to happen. And, and I have said this before, we don't talk about, the consumerism. We don't talk about, changing how we live. We don't talk about everything that we plug in, for electric. We don't talk about the things that really make a difference for the planet, for the air we breathe, the water we drink, even the soil we grow our food on. That's at the heart of all of this. And I think that that's why some of us, as frustrated as we get, especially BIPOC people, we understand how important the earth is because we've had to work that earth and we've been a part of it. And our ancestors have been a part of it. And, that should be at the very forefront of, of everything we do. And we can't afford to leave anybody behind. We have to be a community. People don't understand that a community is a group of people that help one another. If one is suffering, they're all suffering. And we need to develop here in Vermont a community mindset. I hear the word used a lot, but I don't see it often implemented. Because if it was implemented, we wouldn't have those people sitting down in tents down on North Beach. We wouldn't have men who have gone off and and fought wars and come back, sitting on benches at night trying to find a place to sleep or find something to eat. We wouldn't have people who have disabilities being frightened of being kicked out of their homes because they can't afford to pay the rent and their medications. So we need to be a community, and we need to understand that what we are fighting for is to preserve this land that we live on, this air that we breathe. You know, the earth may survive no matter how we treat it and how ill we make it, but we sure as heck aren't. We are not as resilient as those rocks that we walk upon. Those are the oldest living things on this planet. So, in writing this up, I really want to keep the focus on what we're here for and who it's affecting.
I'm finding all the words and images and emotion really inspiring this evening, and I feel like it's just the kind of like inspiration that I need as a liaison to be able to make space for this conversation at an upcoming subcommittee meeting. Because I will speak just from my personal experience. I'm really good at like sharing information and gathering the data and talking, capturing the talking points. But I, for a variety of reasons, sort of forget about the heart part in the workspace. I bring it very willingly in my personal life, but I don't always kind of make space to bring it into my professional work. And so I'm just really grateful and inspired by kind of the sentiments that so many of you have shared this evening that just are helpful for me personally to kind of gear up for a conversation with a subcommittee that has clearly been thinking about this work on some level, and I'm not sure how invested they have been in the kind of the just transition perspective. And I feel more kind of like energized to be able to have this conversation with them from all that you've offered this evening. So thank you for that. Yeah, Denise.
Abby, it just goes back sort of to an initial thing I brought up. It's wonderful to have our feels when we're talking together. Are we going to pepper the document with wording from the people?
Mm-hmm.
Sophie sent out these notes on what people actually said out there around climate change. These are real people who are really living here. It doesn't have to take up the whole thing, but just a few.
I can respond to that quickly, Denise. I'm so glad you're saying that, because that's, I think, part of what we're trying to get at with this, like, designed and more plain language version. There's going to be a component of storytelling to it. And what I really want to do is have some quotes exactly like you're saying, and photos, so people can feel it and see themselves in the plan, see their voices in the plan. And I think that would be a really great thing to get Just Transitions subcommittee members' input on. And I'm not quite there yet in terms of like having something for you all to give input on, but I'm really excited to kind of think through like, what are those stories we want to tell, a couple like quotes and people's experiences that we want to feature, and would really love to do that in partnership with you all.
Can I ask just like a housekeeping question, I guess, or administrative question? So it was brought up that the intention is that the liaisons will introduce the visual to their subcommittees. Is there sort of like a timeline for that, or like is it our job as the liaisons to reach out to the chairs of those committees and like make a plan on the agenda for that to happen? I'm just curious because I'm on cross-sector mitigation and their meeting is next week. So I'm just wondering, like, do I need to start putting things in place to be introducing this next meeting, or just like what's the expectation for rolling this out?
Yeah,
And
great question, Kelly. And I think hopefully we can spend the last chunk of this meeting answering any questions about that and prepping liaisons for that. I think maybe Callie and Abby, you might be the only liaisons on the call right now.
Yeah.
So yes, that's the plan, is for at the next meeting of your liaison subcommittee to share the document. You don't have to worry about letting the co-chairs know. They already know, and their agenda should have space for that. If you want to touch base with them directly and say like, hey, can we talk through this? And likewise, I think Callie, you're with Sam as liaison, so maybe you two touch base on that together.
yeah, I think she might be out of the country right now. I'm not sure
Okay.
when she's coming back. She does archaeological work in Italy, I think, is in her free time. So,
just a little side hobby.
yeah, just the thing
That's
she did.
cool.
And
Okay.
I'm remember it's coming to mind now, Abby. I think I'm not sure if this is in the agenda. I think it was in that email that Abby sent out. So when Kelly introduced this visual at the last climate council meeting, she had a really great intro that kind of gave some of the context to it. So we thought that could be, sorry about my dog barking. We thought that could be maybe like a helpful starting place to look at, of like, see how Kelly introduced it and framed it, and that might be helpful inspiration for you for how to talk about it. And then really the basic ideas to kind of walk through and say like, here's what you're supposed to do, answer any questions. And then I feel like what's come up today is really centering the heart piece of it as well, and emphasizing like this isn't just like an intellectual step-by-step exercise, but
Yeah, I guess that was one of my main questions, because I was like, yeah, I can say here's the visual, here's the document, but we had a lot of like rich conversation around it, and I really don't feel like I can do everyone's really thoughtful comments justice in my introduction of it. So that's just for me to, I guess, ruminate on for myself and try and figure that out. But yeah, so if there's any guidance, that would be helpful on how to introduce it.
Again, I will admit that I feel similarly, Kelly, and so I watched the recording, the section that Kelly spoke for about 10 minutes, and I kind of put that information back in the chat here. And took notes, because I too was just like, okay, what were like some of the key points and the thoughts and the kind of purpose that Kelly captured when she presented this to the Climate Council. And I found that helpful. And then again, as I shared a moment ago, I also just found a lot of the heartfelt emotion that was shared in this subcommittee meeting as like an important complement to like the talking points around the purpose, but like kind of making it the personal side and like the why this truly matters component. My vision is that as the liaison for the ag and ecosystem, that I will be introducing this tool and trying to sort of encourage the subcommittee to use this tool that might be a little bit more streamlined or a bit more simplified than the full Just Transition Guiding Principles document and associated assessment questions. So I think the piece that's powerful about this tool is that it's 2 pages with a 3rd page of questions, I guess, but that it is a shorter resource, and hopefully, and then I guess it also has to your point, Callie, the other checklist as an associated resource, but it will hopefully make the effort of like, I want to do this consideration. I want to bring heart to this work. How do I do it in something that feels a bit more kind of accessible and streamlined? So again, I feel like that's, a majority of what my purpose is as the liaison in introducing this tool. There may be questions about how to do it and when to do it and, what that might look like, that I'm not sure that I will have all the answers, but happy to be a part of that conversation. And I will admit, I don't know how much time we each have on the agenda for this, but I'm guessing it's, maybe 15, 20 minutes that can be our introduction of the tool, and then, opportunity for questions and reactions. So Sophie's saying that she'll be at the Ag and Eco and the cross-sector mitigation meetings next week. So I just want to note, Claire, that you are sort of our kind of liaison individual to the Science and Data Committee, and then Danielle is to Rural Resilience, and Danielle's not here, and I don't know if Danielle has been able to attend Rural Resilience meetings. It really depends on the time of day as to whether Danielle is able to participate based upon her work schedule. So I'm a little unclear if that committee will have representation from our subcommittee at their upcoming meeting. Okay, great. I'm glad she was at the last one.
And for science, oh,
Go ahead, Claire.
Oh, I was gonna say, I know with regards to the guiding principle science, well, science and data has not been meeting super regularly, and is also, I think, similar to just transitions, and it's not drafting recommendations that are feeding into the climate action plan. So maybe Sophie, you and I could touch base about the best way to introduce this to science and data, because it is sort of on a different timeline, or plays a different role than cross-sector rural resilience and ag and eco. Not to say that the guiding principles don't apply to that subcommittee, but I feel like it may be a slightly different application to the way the other subcommittees may look to apply the principles.
Yeah, that makes sense, Claire. I was thinking a similar thing, and the other thing I was going to say is that I could email Danielle to kind of share, like, here's what we talked about, and Rural Resilience hasn't scheduled their October meeting yet for the full subcommittee. I think it's going to be in the end of October. So I'd be happy to reach out to Danielle to let her know what we talked about, kind of flag that here's what's coming up, and offer support.
Yeah, Sophie, both accounts. Okay, so it's 6 p.m. I want to kind of wrap us on time. The next steps as I see them are Claire, Beverly, and I are going to get together in the next couple of weeks to develop an outline for the update to, and Denise, I'm sorry, and Denise. I added you in one place and not both places, Denise, my apologies. So glad that you also volunteered. So I will reach out to try to schedule something for the four of us. Liaisons are going to be meeting with their subcommittees in the next couple of weeks, sharing the new visual, and the group will meet again as a full subcommittee. Our subcommittee will meet again on November 7th. I will be out of the country, so I will actually miss our November and our December meetings, and I'm sorry about that. But Kelly will be here for both of those. She was sorry she couldn't be here this evening. So we'll just sort of pass the facilitation torch to the co-chair. Anything else that I'm missing? There's October meetings for input that hopefully folks can offer suggested names and organizations to. So if you shared that link with us. Anything else that I'm missing that feels like a relevant kind of what's next? Okay. Have a great evening, everyone. Great to see you. Take care. Bye.